Hi everyone, this is Joshua Porch and welcome once again to the Biohacking Academy. Now in this video I'm going to be teaching you guys a little bit more in depth about, I said I was going to do that, about one neurotransmitter or biochemical, chemicals that are naturally occurring in the body. And at the time I said it in the last video, I wasn't sure which one I was going to do. Well, now I'm ready. Okay, so today's lesson is going to be about serotonin. And it's going to be a little bit more in-depth than what I've talked about in the second video that I posted on this channel, which was, it comes right after the intro video where I do the CBD flower review. It's my first real teaching video. That one I covered a little bit about several different body chemicals. Okay, so first things first, what is serotonin? Okay, now serotonin is probably one of the most well-known and most heard of chemicals in the body, specifically because it happens to be something that is the target for a lot of prescription antidepressant drugs. They're designed to try to cause the body to keep serotonin in the system for longer periods of time within the brain before it's called reuptake inhibitor. It basically means reuptake is the process where the body pulls serotonin out of the bloodstream, out of the synapse region. Sorry if that made a loud noise on the mic. Anyway, so reuptake takes serotonin out of the bloodstream or the synapse or whatever, and it reduces the amount that's available to produce signaling, and thus, less serotonin related effects. Well, even though that's a natural process in people, and some people it happens more frequently or in larger amounts than is appropriate, and SSRIs are effective for some people if that's actually what they need. Unfortunately, a lot of people, SSRIs cause more problems than they help. But thankfully, there are plenty of other non-prescription methods of raising serotonin, most of which work in a different way than an SSRI and are safer or have different kind of effects and benefits. Okay, so what does serotonin do? Okay, now I'm going to cover a couple different categories of it. There's what it does physiologically, emotionally, intellectually, mentally or psychologically, and then finally spiritually. Okay, so physiologically, serotonin pretty much is responsible for a wide variety of physical activities in the body. Have to do with heart rate, breathing, appetite, and nausea, as well as memory and wakefulness or sleepiness and things of that nature, as well as imagination and different aspects of cognition. Cognition itself is a much more complicated subject that I'll tackle on its own at a later date, because there's many different chemicals and signaling functions involved with that. But okay, so physiologically, I mentioned heart rate, appetite, nausea, cognition, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so here's the thing. An example is when you have the flu, that flu-like feeling that you get is actually from too much stimulation at a certain type of serotonin receptor. Now there's many different types. I'm not going to go into all of them in this teaching. However, some serotonin receptors produce different types of effects or feelings than other ones do. So even though you've got that one chemical, serotonin, or maybe you have something in the bloodstream that mimics it, and I'll cover those in a little bit. You know, whenever that chemical attaches to one type of serotonin receptor, it may produce totally different effects than if it attaches to one of the other types. And at a later date in a paid program that I'm going to have available, I will teach much more in depth on every neurotransmitter and hormone for the most part, and a lot of biological processes. So if you're interested in learning the really deep nitty-gritty, you can either wait for the paid course to come out, or you can hire me to do one-on-one coaching for you, which I'll discuss a little bit more in a few more minutes. Now, emotionally, serotonin, it typically, not all the time, but much of the time, makes people more calm, creative, attached to people. Serotonin has a lot to do with feelings of love and warmth, and it doesn't necessarily have much to do with sexual feelings, but it is more involved with the butterflies, the lovey-dovey puppy dog type of feeling that you get in relationships. And serotonin also, too much can make you depressed, and too little can make you depressed. It's a finicky system in your body. Intellectually, serotonin plays a role in memory and focus, in the sense that, again, too little or too much serotonin will harm your cognition, but there's a certain range where it will help. For example, I'm not telling people to go out and do this because it's not legal. People can decide on their own if they're going to do something that's illegal. So I'm just putting it out there for informational purposes. Everyone can make their own choices on whether they do what I'm about to tell you about or not. However, it's pretty well known in the scientific community and technology community, especially in California and New York, that a lot of tech giant CEOs and very high up scientists microdose psychedelics such as psilocybin from magic mushrooms and LSD in order to gain intellectual boosting. Okay, so microdosing means taking a very small dose that's not enough to make you intoxicated, or maybe it gives you a small buzz but not enough to impair your ability to work. And instead what it does is that just right amount of serotonin increase that you get from the psilocybin or the LSD, it improves their memory and their ability to make connections between things that would otherwise be more difficult to think of. And it's the process of microdosing serotonergic psychedelics has been pretty well known to help people come up with creative solutions to very complex problems that they were completely stumped on in their normal everyday state. Now, again, it's not legal to do, at least in the United States, unless you happen to live in Denver, Colorado, where they recently decriminalized psilocybin mushrooms. But with that exception, you would have to go to a country where either LSD or psilocybin was not illegal, if you want to do this legally. Now, I know most people are not going to do that, but that's another topic for another day. Okay, so moving on, mentally and psychologically, well, I covered a little bit of that in the emotional area, but serotonin affects people psychologically in a way that I guess could be best described as dreamy or daydreaming or getting lost in thought sometimes, and getting involved in a complex thing in your imagination and time passing by without you realizing it. That can happen sometimes with serotonin boosting things. But there's a good time and place for all of that kind of stuff. And in certain times and instances, such a process of taking something that boosts serotonin and sitting down and meditating or thinking about complex ideas can be very helpful in your life overall. Okay, now finally, spiritually. Now this one, if I'm mentioning my specific spiritual beliefs. If you don't agree with them, then that's on you. I know not everybody will, and I know that my beliefs may sound weird to some people, but at some point I may give a more deep, further explanation as to why I believe what I believe. And trust me, I have some, what I believe to be some pretty powerful, deep reasons for that. However, I believe that serotonin has a very powerful link to the spirit world and the function of spirituality within a human being. Now, that is not to say that I believe that spirituality as a whole is just some illusion that's created by chemical processes in your brain. I'm not saying that at all. I know that illusions and delusions can occur from chemical interactions, but that does not mean that some spirit world does not exist. Now, what I believe about serotonin is that from a spiritual standpoint, it affects your brain's ability to perceive things that are in the spirit world. And I like to compare it to a radio receiver and frequencies. Okay, so a radio receiver is actually the radio part that's in your car with the knob on it and all of that. And of course the antenna is what picks up the signals. Well, in this case, there might be many different physical structures in the brain that are involved with forming the metaphorical antenna for picking up spiritual info. However, I do believe that the pineal gland is probably the primary piece of the antenna system, so to speak. And the pineal gland produces, or is at least is able to produce, many different types of serotonin-based chemicals, which can have profound effects on spiritual perception. And once more, or rather, to go further, serotonin basically is able to change what frequencies your brain is able to pick up and retain the information of in a conscious way. See, there's this thing called the reticular activating system in your body, your brain specifically, and it decides what information that it receives from the outside world it's going to filter and allow you to have conscious awareness of. So this reticular activating system decides, I'll have to look up a source to back this up. However, I do remember learning from a very credible source at some point in my life that our brains filter out about 98% of the information that they perceive. So brain is able to perceive, say, I guess you could say 100% of all information that's out there around us in the invisible spectrum. But our brains know that if we were to try to consciously perceive all 100% of everything that's out there, it would be overload and we wouldn't be able to handle it. So that's what the purpose of the reticular activating system is. Now, me personally, I believe God designed it that way. And I believe that he had a good reason for doing that, particularly because if anyone has ever had visions or experiences involving the spirit world, you probably pretty quickly come to realize that there can be some powerful and frightening experiences that can occur there. And so I guess you could say from God's mercy, he made us. Sorry about that ding. I could say that with God's mercy, he made us. Sorry about that second ding. I could say that with God's mercy, he made us to be very limited in our ability to perceive the spirit world, although he has reasons for wanting us to be able to perceive a certain amount of things from the spirit world, and particularly at certain times. And I believe serotonin plays a key role in that. Now, let me give another example. It's on the radio analogy. Okay, so let's say normal everyday waking consciousness is like station 91.0. Okay, so what serotonin and other serotonin-like chemicals is able to do, what they're able to do, is change what bandwidth or frequency spectrum your brain is able to perceive and allow into your conscious mind through the reticular activating system. So an example would be, say, X units of serotonin above and beyond the normal level that most people have on a regular everyday basis. Let's say X number of extra serotonin molecules coming in changes your brain to be able to perceive frequency from, say, instead of just 91.0, it can perceive from 98.0 up to 101.5, so to speak. And what that means is there are things out there that exist in the invisible realm that we normally couldn't perceive because they're not in that 91.0 frequency for this example. However, if the serotonin shifted or expanded the amount of frequency range that our brain could perceive consciously, whatever exists in those other frequencies, we would then be able to perceive, whether that be colors that we're normally not able to see, or energy patterns that we're normally not able to see, or whether it be imaginative information, so to speak. Because there's some interesting theories out there about where imagination comes from. Like, when you're imagining something, where does that content come from? Some people believe that that might be your brain picking up some kind of information from the invisible realm when you have a thought or a flash of some new genius idea, so to speak. So I guess that's the best way I know how to describe serotonin's effects spiritually. Now, I'm not necessarily saying it's always a good thing to have your spiritual perception expanded beyond the normal everyday level, because now, again, this is my personal belief. Don't get all offended and butt hurt at me if you don't like what I'm about to say next, but to each their own. I believe that if someone is a Christian or is not a Christian, that it makes a difference in what spiritual information they will receive when they become able to perceive in the spirit realm. So I believe that someone who has not been saved by Jesus Christ, and according to the traditional message of Christianity of what that means, being saved, if someone is saved by Jesus Christ, then I believe that any experience they have in the spirit realm is going to be different than the experience that someone who is not saved. I'm doing air quotes there with my finger, because I'm familiar with a lot of churchy language that a lot of other people may not be, so I'm trying not to use too much of that. But basically what I'm saying is, yes, I believe that different chemicals and even non-chemical things can affect or expand your spiritual perception abilities, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every outcome from doing that's going to be good. But at least it's a very interesting thing to know about and try to understand deeper. And if anyone wants to learn deeper about that specific area, they can contact me, and I will gladly, with whatever time I'm able, I will share more information about how all that works, or at least in my belief and personal experience. Okay, so now I mentioned that there's different types of serotonin receptors. Now I'm not really going to get into those in this video. Again, the course that I mentioned that I'm coming out with, well, I'm currently developing it. It's a pretty large, powerful course with a lot of information, so it's taken a while to put together the right way. But it's going to be called the Biohacking Mastery Course. And when it comes out, you'll learn much more in depth about all the different types of serotonin receptors, dopamine receptors, acetylcholine receptors, GABA receptors, on and on and on, all the different major important body chemicals and brain chemicals, and all their different types of receptors and what each of them does, and on and on and on. Now, I'm not trying to swamp you guys with information. It's just that the more you understand about how the body works, the more things you can do to enhance your health your physical and mental performance, all sorts of different enhancements you can do in your life when you understand better and better about the functioning of the human body. So that's the reason that I'm trying to teach people about all this stuff. But so, the course, it might be another several months or a year before it's completely completed and ready to go on the market. So until then, before that time comes where it's released, if you'd like to learn the stuff that I'm going to be teaching in the course, you can contact me and request private one-on-one coaching. Now, the private one-on-one coaching is going to be half-hour sessions that are $35 each, and I will teach you as much as I possibly can in 30 minutes, and it'll be on whatever subject of bodily functioning that you want me to teach you about. I can provide you with a list or a document, a chart, something like that, that describes all the different choices you have as to what you want to learn about. I can let you choose, or there is a certain order in which I think it would be best to teach you things, and if you want to go that path, you can. So just go to the contact form at www.joshuaporchscience.com. Go to the contact tab and send me an email through there. And of course, I'll get your email address through that. But I'd also appreciate it if you'd put your phone number or Facebook info in there, something like that, so I have more ways of contacting you than just email. Email is not always the easiest to keep up with. But so if you're interested in that, that's where you go. And also, if you're interested in trying any of the free samples of herbal supplement products that I have available right now, just request that through the contact form. Give me your address and let me know whether you're looking for something that's more energizing or sedative or pain relief or anxiety relief, or something that's kind of well balanced. An example being like, hemp and marijuana both have varying types of strains, and a balanced hybrid, so to speak, is both stimulating and relaxing at the same time. So, I've got different herbal products I produce. Again, completely legal. I don't use anything illegal or synthetic in my stuff. But, I have some herbal mixture formulas that are like a balanced hybrid, so to speak, that have both stimulating and relaxing properties both at the same time. So, yeah, just let me know what kind of product you're looking for, and whatever I have available that's closest to match that, I'll send you a free sample. Just give me your address. Okay, now finally I'm going to cover what are some common foods and herbs that will increase or mimic serotonin, things that will be pretty easily available to you. Okay, now the first is actually an amino acid from which serotonin is created, and it's called tryptophan. Now, you can buy L-tryptophan in capsule form. GNC doesn't usually carry it. Vitamin Shop does, but easiest way is to just look online, search for L-tryptophan capsules, and you'll find it pretty easily. But tryptophan is pretty high content in cottage cheese, turkey, and milk. If you want to eat some of those or all three before you go to bed, it'll probably help calm you down and make you sleepy pretty quickly. Okay, so another and this is more of an indirect way of increasing serotonin activity, is to take soy lecithin. And now I understand there's people who care about whether something's organic or not, and I subscribe to that belief. You can get organic soy lecithin if that's a concern to you. But anyway, so taking the soy lecithin, it blocks the dopamine receptors and upregulates them, which means it makes the dopamine receptors more sensitive. Well, when you block dopamine receptors, you increase the activity, or you increase the amount of serotonin and serotonin activity that's going on in the body, and vice versa. When you block serotonin receptors, you get more dopamine activity going on. So basically, soy lecithin, by blocking the dopamine receptor, it increases serotonin activity, which is why it makes you sleepy. And it can be great for insomnia, lowering cortisol at night if it's too high, which I've had a problem with. And I've definitely found soy lecithin to help. The only caveat I'll give is that soy lecithin, depending on the amount you use, larger amounts will sometimes cause a headache the next morning when you wake up. So smaller amounts will not usually cause a headache. Medium amounts might cause a slight headache. Larger doses might cause a pretty moderate headache the next morning, but if large doses will put you to sleep very quickly, almost without fail, if that's something that's urgent. Okay, so some more things you can try. Turmeric, that orange spice that you see in grocery stores and a lot of curry products. Turmeric, especially when you combine it with black pepper, it will it's a mild MAOI, and it increases both dopamine and serotonin, but it tends to lean a little bit more toward the serotonin side. And if you take turmeric and black pepper along with one of the tryptophan rich foods like cottage cheese, turkey, or milk, then it will really boost the activity of the tryptophan and the serotonin, and usually that combination will also make you pretty sleepy. Yeah, so California poppy and red poppy, that's two more herbs that you can get over the counter that have serotonin-like effects. Well, they stimulate the serotonin receptors. Now, don't worry, these are not necessarily the same type of effects as opium poppy. That's part of the reason why these flowers are legal, the red poppy and the California poppy. But they both have effects that are similar to the opium poppy, but much milder, much milder. Neither of those products are necessarily that strong, but if you make a tea from 1 or 2 grams of either one, or if you combine them together and drink that in the evening, it can help calm you down gradually and ease you into sleep rather than knocking you out like a wrecking ball. And now another one is ashwagandha. It's a pretty common and popular herb. Now it boosts serotonin and GABA. Serotonin and GABA usually go together, like usually one increases along with the other. Not all the times, but a lot of time. Definitely when GABA is stimulated, it causes increased serotonin receptor activity. Now, this last one that I'm going to mention, it's another one of those kind of, it's gray area legal wise. It's one of these do at your own risk kind of things. But if you're more curious herbal explorer, you can check out something called LSA, which is a natural compound present in morning glory seeds or Hawaiian baby wood rose seeds. Now, LSA, it's chemically related to LSD, but it's a lot less powerful from a visual standpoint. It doesn't produce that much visual activity, but it does produce a pretty, depending on the amount you take, it can produce a pretty heavy physical experience that's very serotoninergic in nature. And it can affect the mind in larger doses. I'll put it out there as a disclaimer, I'm not necessarily recommending people do this at all. It's just, again, one of those informational purposes things. A lot of people have experimented with LSA containing seeds in the past, but it's not necessarily the most fun experience. However, if you want to, if you do decide that you're going to try it, research what the dosage ranges are and try a light dose first, because the effects of medium and larger doses can be both pleasant and unpleasant both at the same time. You'll have a pleasant physical feeling along with a unpleasant physical feeling, as well as nausea and vomiting in larger amounts, larger doses of it. And specifically, LSA is a vasoconstrictor. It raises your blood pressure, shrinks your blood vessels. Now, in smaller amounts, it's not really that dangerous unless you're someone who already has high blood pressure. If you're someone with healthy blood pressure range, a low dose of LSA is not going to pose much risk to you, but larger doses will, unless you create a naturally created analog of it. Basically, there are certain essential oils that, when combined with LSA, will produce a different chemical, and the one that's combined with cinnamon essential oil is known to be a vasodilator, so it doesn't have the risk of raising your blood pressure and constricting blood flow when it's done properly. I'm not going to necessarily teach people how to do that, or at least not on YouTube. There's a very, very small amount of people that I believe would be properly suited to do that kind of experimentation. I'm just informing people of some interesting things that are out there. Okay, so in closing, boosting serotonin at night can help you sleep better, produce a peaceful meditative state in the evening hours, will make you more likely to want to cuddle, hug, and have deep conversations with your loved ones. It will also improve the sensitivity of dopamine receptors in your brain for the following day, which will make things like coffee and other dopamine boosting supplements more effective at enhancing and increasing your cognition and your testosterone levels and your energy, and that sort of thing. Alright, so I know I've covered a lot of stuff here in this video. If it was too much for you, I'm sorry about that. This is just the teaching style that I have. I try not to overwhelm people with too much information at once, but there's just so much to know, and I wish I could just download every bit of information and knowledge that I have in my head into everyone else's head just all at one time, but I know that it's not possible. But I do appreciate you listening and making consideration of the things I've said, and I do ask that you'll continue to stay tuned. Not all of my posts or videos rather are going to be this complex, so don't worry about that. I'm not going to fry your brains every time I come out with a new video, but there's a lot of different health science related topics for me to cover, and yeah, so this is going to take a while until I feel like I've expended everything that I can put on YouTube for free, of course, because I have to, I have this mission. I want to teach people a lot of stuff about health and herbs and science, but I also need to make enough money to take care of my family, both my current family members and any future one. So, I'm creating products that I feel like will be a very good deal and value for people who do make the smart decision to purchase them. I'm trying to create them with enough value and powerful content that they'll be getting something that's worth way more than I'm charging for it. But in order for me to do that, I have to reserve certain information for the course that I'm not going to release for free here on YouTube. So I have to be selective about that, but I've also got to have enough good content to put out on YouTube so that you guys will want to keep watching and listening and not get bored. So that's what's going on there. But again, I thank you for watching and listening. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a blessed day. Peace.